Hey YouTube, welcome back to the channel. So this video is me kind of having a little bit of discussion following up on something that I referenced in the live stream. I wanted to have a little bit of a discussion, kind of a general principle and idea of how you could build your own. I don't want to use system. I think system is not exactly the word I want to use. I want to stick to something more like an approach. And I think this is useful regardless of what category you put yourself into. If you're more of a collector type, if you're more of an investor type, if you're kind of a hybrid of the two, I think there's still some value to it, because there's a couple of specific areas and reasons that I want to focus in on that I think are going to help you. Because the exercise of creating your own approach or coming up with it, it adds that aspect where now you're not just blindly following your emotions and reactions. If every time you're about to go buy a card, then there's at least a process of, oh, where does this fall in what I'm trying to do? Then that little bit of deliberation makes it so that you can probably make better decisions. So regardless of what you end up actually doing, whether you end up picking it up or not, at least that hesitation provides that little extra for you. You don't want to be acting impulsively, because usually that's a good way of throwing away a lot of your hard-earned money on something. And I think there are ways that you can create your own version of what I'm going to share with you today so that you can make it work for you, depending on what your goals are and what you're trying to do with your collection, your investment, whatever the case may be for you. Now, quick caveat I want to get into before I continue. Nothing that I'm going to talk about in this video should be construed as being investment advice. I'm not giving you investment advice. I'm going to use examples. These are things that work for me, and I'm going to explain the rationale behind them, because hopefully those examples are illustrative and can help you build and develop your own approach or system or whatever you want to call it. But the thing is, when I do so, these are things that work for me. I've done my research. I've looked into it in the way that I'm comfortable with what I'm going to share with you. You shouldn't be blindly following anything that anybody builds that's similar to this, because maybe it won't work for you. Maybe you're not going to be as comfortable making the moves that I would be comfortable making, because I've done my research and digging. Just following blindly a list is a terrible way of approaching things. And then what happens if conditions change? Because I know exactly why I'm approaching these things the way that I am, and I'll explain that a little bit, give you some of the rationale. Then if something changes and I need to pivot and make moves in certain directions, I won't hesitate, because I built the system for me. And when I'm giving you the example, I'm just showing it to you so that you can take it back with you and say, okay, well, this doesn't make sense for me. Maybe I want to make it simpler. Maybe I want to make it more complicated. Maybe I need more categories. Whatever works for you is what you should be doing. And you can use this kind of as a model to figure out what you want to do. I think, though, regardless of whether you're a collector or investor or whatever, I think there is some value in understanding that for most of us, our cards fall into multiple buckets. Buckets is the analogy that I've decided to use. But you can call it whatever you want. Categories, buckets, whatever. But for most people. Now, when I go and show it to you, so I'm going to pull up a lovely little graphic that I took several minutes building, several seconds. But the point is that I feel like that in itself is worth a like, if you haven't already done that on the video. But anyway, let me explain. So as I go through these buckets that are the ones that I follow, I'll explain what they are. I'll explain why, the methodology of why I use them and how they work for me. And then also I'll give some examples along the way. But then I'll also explain as I go along that each one of them kind of has their own little set of rules in how I use them, and also certain criteria that I employ in order to figure out where something falls. So when I'm looking at something potentially, even in the quick fraction of a second that I'm making a decision, I'm thinking to myself, where does this fall? If I was to pick this up and pay for it and get it in, where am I supposed to be putting this? If I feel like it doesn't neatly fall into one of these categories, then usually I'm in a little bit of trouble, because then I'm potentially buying something that I don't really have a use for or don't have an idea what I want to do with. And that's problematic. And if you don't even have a system or any kind of a set of buckets for yourself, then it's going to make your life even harder. So quickly, I'll go through each one of them, and then I'll explain and I'll give some examples of each. And then you'll see how, as I go along, each one of them has their own unique criteria that work for me when I'm using it to make decisions on eBay or in a show or whatever I'm going to do. So the first one should be the most obvious. PC, personal collection. We know what this is. But let me quickly back up a little bit, and let me explain kind of why there's a little bit of fluidity between these categories. It's not as simple as each one falls neatly in there. There can be a little bit of overlap, but I'll explain how you make that work for you, because the fluidity is actually a feature. It's not a bad thing. It's actually helpful, because sometimes certain things need to shift around as your collecting goes forward. Personal collection should be the simplest concept for most people to grasp, because it's what a lot of us do as collectors. We're collecting. But what happens is, personal collection, for me, the way I define it, is that it's the one where I'm least concerned about resale value. I'm least concerned about value in general. that doesn't mean that I ignore value. That doesn't mean if there's a card there that, I'm monitoring it and it usually sells for 15 or $20, that suddenly I'm going to go offer somebody $300 for it. I'm not being fiscally irresponsible. I'm not being stupid. The goal here is to try to make your hobby buck stretch as much as you can and accomplish your goals. That's really what you want to do. You don't want to put yourself into debt or create problems for yourself just to collect cards. That's usually not the way you want to go about it. But for a PC card, since I'm not worried about, the flipping prospects of it, I'm going to be less concerned about squeezing every last dollar out of the transaction. And if the card is going for $15 or $20 normally, and they've dried up the last little while, and maybe it's a rare piece or whatever the case may be, and maybe there's one for sale for $25, I might try to talk them down from it a little bit. But if it ends up being the $5 is the difference to get the deal done for a card that I actually want, key being I actually want it, for a PC item, I'm more inclined to do that. For some of these other categories, though, I'm going to be a lot pickier, and I'm going to be a lot more steadfast in making sure that I hold the line on price. And it's going to depend on where it falls. And as I go along, you'll see why that becomes more and more important as you get through the rest of them. For a PC card, it can be anything. And sometimes some of the stuff that's on those other categories can become PC items and vice versa. Things can shift over left and right. Now, a lot of times when it's PC items, it can be stuff that just different things that I find that are interesting. I did in a recent pickup video, I found a lot of those 2020 Leaf wrestling cards. So I picked up this one like from Sid Vicious. And I remember watching a lot of his stuff back when he was with WCW and also WWF, later WWE, but WWF when he was there, and his various iterations. Stuff like this is fun for me. I'm not worried about the value of this per se, but I'm also not going to ridiculously overpay for it based on what other ones have sold for. But if I was able to find one at a price I was comfortable with, which I was, then I was happy to pick this up because this is fun for me. The stuff like this is going to go in the collection, and it's not going anywhere. The intention of the personal collection bucket is that for the most part, that is stuff that is intended to be super long hold to permanent hold. Basically, unless I run into financial difficulty, it's not going anywhere, and unless I basically die. If I die, well, then you guys can do whatever you want with the cards. I don't care. But otherwise, the idea is that for the most part, they're going to stay forever. But sometimes an item can shift between the two of them, and there are scenarios where that can be applicable, and I'll explain that in a second. So that's the personal collection bucket. That's probably the simplest one, aside from the last one, which is also pretty simple, and I'll explain that. But let me open up this the little model here again, and let's shift over to the second one. So the next one that we're going to be talking about is the blue chips. So personal collection is super long-term hold / permanent hold / forever and ever amen. Blue chips can be a longer term hold as well. Blue chips, though, is my criteria for it, is the next three buckets are based on their level of volatility and risk. There is nothing that is without risk. The thing with the reason I separated PC from it is that PC is personal collection. It's intended to, unless something comes up that makes it worth doing, I'm keeping those cards regardless of what happens market-wise, up or down. But the other ones are ones that maybe have a little bit more possibility of being flipped. But what happens is when you look at a blue chip, I'm looking at the lowest volatility level. There is going to be volatility no matter what. There is no guarantee that something, you can have a T206 Honus Wagner, and it is theoretically possible that the price and value could go down on it. Historically, that hasn't been the case, but there is nothing that is without risk. There is no zero risk item that you can buy. But blue chips tend to be in the better end of that. Blue chips tend to be vintage. Blue chips tend to be, already players are already in the Hall of Fame. Their credentials are established. Their place in history is already secured. And then the third category that I would put into that is players who might be still playing, but they're towards the tail end of their career, or they're at a stage where their next, their fate post-playing career is already decided. They're already Hall of Famers. They're already first ballot Hall of Famers. They can be a variety of those ones. It's a lot easier for them to have less volatility. They'll still go up and down, as they tail off the end of their career. But then after they retire and after they head to the Hall of Fame, usually they'll see some appreciation. An example that I've used in the past is Derek Jeter. He was kind of stagnant for a while, and then finally, for some reason, people realized that he was going to Hall of Fame, and then there was that little boost there. Obviously, when other sports cards were boosting, people were looking for players like that. Well, he was going to the Hall of Fame, no matter what. As a non-Yankee fan, I knew he was going to the Hall of Fame. I wasn't going to question that. But I found it interesting and funny that suddenly people realized that his SP rookie was condition sensitive, a little harder to get in nicer condition, and suddenly that was spiked up. Eventually, it did come back down. But if you had held it from prior to that entire run-up, you could have done well if you wanted to move a copy, or maybe you had a couple of copies. That's what I'm saying. So scenarios like that do happen. Well, at that point, Jeter would have been a blue chip. That would have qualified as a player in that category because you knew where he was going. Like, his credentials were secured. He had the World Series championships. He had over 3,000 hits comfortably, and all the other pieces were in place for him to go to the Hall of Fame. You knew this was the case, so he was stable. Even if it hadn't shot up the way it did, you knew it wasn't going to like crash down because his career was over. What was he going to do other than something, outside the field that would have wrecked his value? So that's about as stable as you're going to get. Not without risk, because obviously after it came up, it did come down a little bit, but it's still certainly at a higher level than it was prior to that run up. So that's what I mean. A blue chip will tend to hold that way. The example that I'll use for a blue chip, and this is where I can work the line between PC and blue chip. That's why I say there's a little bit of fluidity in this model. So blue chip. So first, let me do PC quickly. I'll use an example here, and then I'll use blue chip. So I use the wrestling card as a PC piece because it's completely outside of it. I'm not even considering whether I'd flip a card or not. I'm not worried about any of that. But let me use an example here. So this is a 2001 Bowman Best, Albert Pujols. So that's his rookie card. And I love these things because they are kind of a refractor shine, even though that's for the base card. And these are numbered. They're numbered to $29.99. Now, this one does have a little bit of chipping there at the top. It's got the dark border. So I don't think it would grade super high. I think it would do okay. But like, as much as I like to make fun of SGC in my videos and streams, and I like making fun of them because they do some silly stuff. However, for PC purposes, since I consider this to be a PC card, I enjoy it. I very much love this version of his rookie. There are some other rookies that are more prestigious, certainly, and ones that are less. But this right here is a very fun one, a numbered rookie, and it's got a lot of categories I like. This would be a PC card for me. This is one that I would just keep regardless. I enjoy it. I would probably send something like this to SGC because in the black holder and everything, it would look very nice. So for this, I wouldn't be too concerned about it. If I got the good turnaround time, which currently they've got, which is great, and I've got it in a nice looking holder and everything, that would be a PC piece that I would hang on to. It's not so much value-wise, it's not the player-wise, because I'll show you an example of Pujols cards that would probably fall in the blue chip category because I might move on from them, and I'll explain my rationale, but this is an example of a piece that I would keep for sure. Second one that I would keep, very different, but I'll explain why again. This is 2001 MLB Showdown. So this one here is actually a playing card. It's based on the game by Wizards of the Coast. Now, this is considered by Beckett and other things to be a rookie card. Now, it's kind of fun because you got Pujols here wearing number 68 jersey, which is very uncommon. It is a rookie card, and it is a rookie year because it meets pretty much all the other criteria. This is a nationally available, pack-pulled product that is Major League Baseball licensed and Players Association licensed. So it meets everything else, and it's a card. So this would be another one that, value-wise, it's much less than a lot of the other stuff, but this to me is just a really cool card. So for me, I would probably, again, I'd send something like this to SGC, get it in the holder, and enjoy it as a PC item. So it's not value, it's not even the player, it's do I enjoy it, do I want to keep it? And the answer for both of these guys is yes. So these fall definitely under the PC category. Now, let me show you a few more Pujols cards real quick, and I'll explain why these fall into the blue chip category instead of the PC category, even though I'm a huge Pujols fan. So first I've got a Bowman Best. This one's got some centering issues left to right, which is fine. That's okay. But that would fall under the blue chip category, and I'll explain again in a second. This is a PSA 9, 2001 Top Stars rookie. Neat looking card, but it would also fall under that blue chip category because Pujols' career is already Hall of Fame worthy. He's already a first ballot Hall of Famer, and he's going to finish among the all-times in RBIs. He's at 670 plus home runs, like 3,200 hits, and maybe if the season goes well for him to finish off, 3,300 hits. Like, it's right up there with a guy who hits that kind of home run and that kind of production. Plus, the beginning of his career was off the charts. The latter portion of his career really hurt his value as time went on, but eventually when he retires, we'll be able to look back on his career fondly, and people will think that was a historic career, one amongst the best. So stuff like that makes it interesting what's going to happen in the next couple of years. This one here is a Topps Chrome rookie, BGS 9.5. So this is in a little bit of the older holder. Kind of a neat looking card, and it's got the subgrades on the back, so that's fine. Not the highest of grades, but still pretty good. And this is the flagship, 2001 Topps Traded. This is a BGS 9. So you got the subgrades there. And that's a flagship card. Now, I've got two cards here that have the design of a flagship and everything. They're already graded and everything. Why would I consider this a blue chip and not PC? Because like I said, I'm a big fan of Pujols. Why would I consider flipping these cards? Answer, because I want to add a couple more Pujols cards to my personal collection. The two that I talked about there, I enjoy them. They're not the most valuable necessarily of the bunch, but I love these cards. I do enjoy them for what they are. These ones are going to hang in to the Pujols side of the PC. But there are some other ones, including rookies, that would be interesting for me to have. And the flagship rookie and a couple of those other ones don't interest me as much. The Bowman I do like. And I would probably get another copy of this, maybe a slightly better centered version. So again, this would be a situation where maybe I would move this and at some point try to get a better centered version of the Bowman. So I'd swap one out for the other. That's a situation where there's a little bit of fluidity. It's not that I'm getting rid of the Bowman. It's that I'm trying to find another Bowman that's a little bit better for my aesthetic that I would like to hang on to long term and put it in the PC side of the category. But the second thing is one of the cards, and I'm using examples, specific examples to give you the context of what I'm talking about. One of the ones that I've talked about in the past, on live streams in the past, is the 2001 Topps Gold Pujols. That's not a rookie card. It's a parallel of the rookie card, but to me, I think it's one of the nice ones there, and I'm a big fan of it. And it's a numbered card to 2001, and to me, it's a great card because it's got the foil. It's a little condition sensitive. It's fun with the gold border and everything going on with it. To me, that would be a really cool card to have, and it would be one that I would love to add to the personal collection. And if the opportunity presented itself, I get a second one. And if I did get a second one, what would probably happen is one of them would end up in that blue chip category, where potentially I could turn it into something else if the card appreciates in time, which I believe it will. That's my opinion. And if that's the case, well, then that would allow me to then leverage and maybe get another PC card. So if I'm trading a PC card, so to speak, by selling it and then using the proceeds to get another PC card, that's a situation where there's some fluidity there. You can have a PC card. Oh, why would you sell that? Because I'm getting another PC card. In this case, maybe a Pujols for a Pujols. That makes sense. So consolidating potentially cards like this for maybe a card that I would really enjoy having, that's something that's certainly viable. It's a viable strategy. So for me, cards like this would be in that blue chip category. So that's why I wanted to differentiate same player, but cards that fall into the two buckets, but for very specific reasons. And that's why there is a distinction between them. So that's why I said those specific criteria are why I separate the blue chip from those other buckets. And now I'm going to get over to the next one, and you'll start seeing how this changes a little bit. Blue chips, one other thing that I'm going to mention about it is that usually PC is the longest time horizon in the sense that the time horizon goes to infinity. You know, as long as I'm around, I can pretty much hang in there unless there's a good reason to move the card, like I mentioned a second ago. But if I'm talking about a blue chip card, I don't have to move any of these today, tomorrow, or a month from now, or a year from now. I can sit back and kind of wait until I feel the time is appropriate. If I come up with a deal that makes sense, I could do it next week, or I could do it 2 years or 5 years from now. I'm not concerned about that. That's where blue chip has a longer time horizon. Now, moving to the second bucket, third actually, but second one for after blue chips, is the medium high risk bucket. Now, this one is interesting because, and I wanted to label it this way so it was clear what it was. This is something where you can still have players or cards that can eventually go to that blue chip category. There is room to move between these categories. But what happens is the blue chip, I was talking about vintage. I was talking about players that already had an established track record where you know they're going to be in the Hall of Fame someday. Already, most of the work's already done. You don't have to establish whether they're going to get there. They're pretty much there. Medium high risk is players where the possibility remains that they could end up in this category, but maybe they're too soon in their careers. They're too young to get into that place. But you're thinking maybe under the right circumstances, they've at least got a possibility. My preference in this category is to at least have some kind of accomplishment already, or to have shown some kind of track record. And that's what differentiates it from the last bucket, which we'll get into in a second. So for my example that I'll give for that one is going to be my Juan Soto collection. And I've got a variety of different Juan Soto cards. Now, in the same vein, just because I'm using Juan Soto as an example, does that mean I don't have any PC cards of Juan Soto? Absolutely not. That is not the case. I've referenced before the Z Folio. Well, this is a Z Folio where I keep some Juan Soto cards, and these are not necessarily high price, high value cards, but the cards that I have fun with and I enjoy. So I've got a variety of them. I'm not going to flip through all that, but the point is, inside of this one, I've picked up a variety of different cards. Some select cards, some prism cards, some different enjoyable cards that I've got some refractors in there. Some of the stuff is probably appreciated a little bit since I bought it, because a lot of it I bought really inexpensively. But it's not the cost element of it. It's the fact that for me, I don't see any reason to flip any of those, even if the price goes a little bit better, because I enjoy having them. For me, they're fun. So for me, that is as good a category as any for PC. PC, a good example of PC is my Mike Modano collection. Everything in the Mike Modano collection is a PC. That's from all the way up to the highest end stuff, maybe some nice stuff from the Cup, one of ones, all that, all the way to the mid tier, all the way to base cards. I'm collecting Mike Modano. I've been doing that for 25 years. Everything I pick up there that I need goes into the PC. It's just there. It goes there without any question. You get to pick the qualifications that the PC falls under. So if you have your own PC category or PC bucket, you can make it whatever you want. I have wrestling cards in there. I have miscellaneous stuff that I have fun with. I have my Modano collection. And I can have some of these Juan Sotos that I think are really great, including some of the ones that are rookie cards. So in some cases, I will try to get multiples of certain ones because I would like to have one that I'm going to keep in the PC, but I can have a second or third where that can go into this medium high risk bucket. Because Juan Soto is a player who has a World Series championship. That's great. And he won a batting title in a truncated season, admittedly. This year he's struggling a little bit, but that could be for a variety of reasons. But I like his long-term prospects because I like the player. I've watched him play enough that I'm comfortable that I believe he will be a good player in the long run as a hitter, especially. So for me, I think he's got a possibility to eventually become a blue chip player. But in order to get there, we have to revisit this conversation in 10 years. I'm not going to be able to put him in that category for years and years and years to come. And he's got to keep building on that body of work over time. That's why I'm not worried about this season or next season or whatever. It's going to be years coming forward where eventually, if he gets in that blue chip category, that's going to be great. But for now, he is certainly a medium to high risk person. That's why he falls into that bucket, because a lot can happen between now and 10 years from now. He could quit the sport next year. We don't know. And injuries, all kinds of stuff can happen. We don't know. There's no way. So there's a lot of volatility. There's a lot of potential risk. It's not the riskiest, because that's going to be the last bucket I'm going to talk about here today, but it's still certainly much more risky than the blue chip players. So it falls right into that middle. So I'll give you a quick couple of cards here that'll be examples, and some where you can take advantage of some opportunities. So quickly, I'll show you. These are the select rookie cards that he's got. So these are the base ones. So I've got multiples, you see. So I'm going to certainly have one. I may send these in for grading at some point, and if I get one, I'll keep it, and then the other ones can go into the pile for potentially getting flipped for something else later on. I've shown recently in a mail day where I had this card that I picked up. So this is the Select Prism, his rookie, BGS 95. Very nice card, very shiny. I enjoy these. Now this one is a card that I would intend to keep in the PC. But in the same vein, here's an interesting thing. I've also got a raw copy that's actually pretty nice as well. So I may end up sending that in at some point for one of the grading services. And if it comes to a good grade, then I may have two of them and be able to then figure out what I want to do next, because most likely I would keep one and then the other one would go into the bucket to be potentially usable to parlay into another card that may be interesting for me for Soto, that may be something I'd want to put in the PC. So you see how like there can be some fluidity, even if something is intended to be a PC piece. If there's an opportunity to pick something else up that may be of more interest, or something that I would really love to have as more of a grail level piece that pretty much goes in the PC and stays there, then that's where you can take advantage of that. Last one I'll show you here from that category is the Aqua version. So this one is a numbered version. Now this certainly could qualify. So there's a number to 299. So this would qualify certainly. You know, you would think surely something like that would be a PC piece. Certainly can be. There's a couple of other variants of it as well, though, that I do enjoy as well. So maybe it'd be a case of maybe I'd sell the Aqua and do something with it and then swap it out for one of the other variants. In theory, you could keep all the copies, but it's just a matter of your personal preference. It's what your goal is. That's the point. What your goal is going to dictate how you're going to approach this. Now, one other thing I'll say quickly, because I didn't touch on it in the blue chips fully, but I want to touch on it now with this one, the two that I've done so far. One of the other factors that changes with the PC cards, I told you, you can be a lot more aggressive with the pricing because you're not concerned about value. As soon as you get into the blue chips and go on down, as you move further and further along, the value becomes increasingly important. When you get to blue chips, you already know they're pretty well established. There's a little less volatility, so maybe you can be a little bit more aggressive than you would be with the medium high risk. Medium high risk, you know there's some volatility there. You know stuff can happen. You don't necessarily want to pay top dollar for anything if you can avoid it. Unless you know that it is a very limited piece. Like if it's a more common thing, you want to be a little bit careful what you pay for it. So that may be where if there's some volatility, you may want to take advantage of a dip. Again, if you're a believer in the player, then that's where you can take advantage of some opportunities. Something like a Soto, and I mentioned it in my pickup video. I picked up, I won't show all the cards here, but I'll show one more. So this is the 2018 Bowman Best, and that's the refractor version. I had a PSA 10 of the base version of this. In April, I sold it for about $200 US. I purchased this for $142 when this dipped down recently. So I was able to get a slightly rarer version of this card. Again, these are not numbered, but this is rarer than the base version. I was able to get a slightly rarer version of it. Same grade, same third-party grader. I was able to get this cheaper than I was able to sell the base version for within a couple of months. To me, that was an opportunity because in the end, I could still go and get another copy of the base. But this is a little tougher to come by. And I have a raw version of this as well. So another opportunity where maybe I could end up with two of these potentially, and then great. Now one of them can go in and be available as a blue chip, as a as a chip with that category to then be able to maybe parlay into an atomic or be able to get a different color or be able to get a different card entirely. Something that maybe I would want to have in the PC a little bit more. So that's kind of how that works out, how you can still have something and then be able to take advantage of it. I've got a couple of variants of the Topps Chrome. I've got a couple of variants of the Topps flagship, including the base card. But it's one of those things where the base card is pretty common, but I look for some other opportunities. I've got a copy of the rainbow. I've got a copy of the gold. The gold I had to get in a lower grade. Would I sell that someday? Possibly. Maybe I would get another copy. And if I could get another copy, well, then I'll keep the lower grade copy. It just depends. These are the decisions you can make, though, as you go along. But how much you want to be able to do as far as moving. If you're in this category, though, you don't want to be paying top dollar for everything because then it makes it more difficult. Because if you do want to be able to flip this and then potentially be able to use it towards a grail piece or something that goes into PC, you want to leave yourself some room. Because if one of these starts off, if this here in the dip was cheaper than the base card a couple of months prior, and eventually soda rebounds, the base card, of course, will go back up in value. Maybe it'll go back to where it was prior to when I sold a copy. If that happens, these were trending around $400. These were about double what that one was. Well, in that case, I have a $400 card that I paid $142 for. Awesome. Good for me. And if I end up with a second copy down the road, well, then fantastic. That's an opportunity for me to flip one of those. And then the difference, which I suddenly made, now I can use that to pick up a different card. That's how you can take advantage of some of this. Again, I'm not recommending the player. You figure out your own thing, what you want to do. It's just an example to give you how you can do a little bit of that if you have done your research and you have the comfort level. I'm willing to make those moves because I have the comfort level with the player because I feel comfortable that I'm able to get a pretty good gauge of where I think they may be down the road. But since it's a little bit riskier than the blue chip cards, I'm also not trying to pay top dollar. I'm trying to take advantage of a dip where I can get the rare card for less money than I sold the more common card for. That's a situation where I effectively made a trade. Over the course of 2 months, I traded the more common card for the rarer card and saved some money in the bargain. I actually got some money back out of the deal. That's not bad. If you can do exchanges like that over time, that's how you can take advantage and slowly build on itself and then work your way potentially up the chain while still having some great cards that you can enjoy. Cards you can enjoy for your PC that don't have to be expensive. PC cards, like I said, don't have to have value. But as you try to look at flipping cards or cards that you may want to do something with, then you do have to consider it more and more, especially as the risk goes up. So that's why I said in that medium high risk category, you definitely have to be a lot more cognizant of the price you get in on versus the blue chip. But you still have to be more cognizant of the blue chip than you do with a PC item. So with all that said, let's move now to the fourth category, but the third, one where you're thinking about flipping. And I'll share it one more time here just to remind ourselves where we were. And then we'll get to this last piece. The last one actually is almost as simple as the PC portion. I'm calling it lottery tickets. You could call it whatever you want. You could call it super high risk, whatever you want to call it. I call it lottery tickets because that's basically what it is. And because the level of risk that we're doing here should dictate how you approach the pricing on this. When I'm saying pricing is like, what are you going to offer? If you're going to buy something that's in this category, well, treat it like a lottery ticket. And what I mean when I say that is that if I told you, hey, here's your paycheck, would you go and spend your entire paycheck on lottery tickets? You might. And if that's the case, maybe get some better financial advice. My financial advice is don't spend your entire paycheck on lottery tickets. That one you can take with you. That one is financial advice for me. Do not spend your entire paycheck on lottery tickets. Probably not a good idea. The reason I call it lottery ticket is, well, let's say you did that. And let's say you won the jackpot. Suddenly you're justified, right? No, you're not. You got lucky. You shouldn't have done that. But if you go and buy a couple of lottery tickets and it doesn't infringe on your ability to pay your bills and it doesn't infringe on your day-to-day life and whatever, you take a stab at it, buy a couple of numbers, maybe the ship comes in and you hit the jackpot, well then fantastic. But you did it in a responsible way. You didn't go off the deep end. Because with this one, since it is so high risk, you have to understand going into it, and when you're taking the approach you're going to take into it, cards in this category could become mid-high risk. And if everything went right, it could become a blue chip, but it's a bit more of a risk. You just don't know. But I can tell you, if you guys go back to 2017, Patrick Mahomes was a lottery ticket. We knew nothing about him. He hadn't started a single game. I was buying his rookie on ComC for $15. I bought 3 of them. I know I did. I know because I said went in for grading, came back a PSA 10. I sold it at what was good market price at the time, a fraction of what it is now. But the point is, he was an unknown quantity. It was very easy to get. You can't buy that card that cheap anymore. But he was a lottery ticket. And he's become a mid-high risk because it isn't done yet, but he's off to a phenomenal start for a career. Going to 2 Super Bowls, winning 1, like pretty solid, pretty good. If it continues, if the trend continues down the road, he could eventually become that blue chip player. And maybe along the way you add some PC cards. Like the PC, the beauty of the PC is that it's flexible. You can add anything you want to the PC. It can be the riskiest player in the world and you can have it as part of your PC if you don't care. If it's just you enjoying yourself, by all means, please continue. But if you're trying to buy something with the idea that maybe down the road you flip it, if it's a higher risk play, that's a lottery ticket card. That's really what it is. So I'm going to give you an example. Same vein, I'll explain my rationale and I'll give you an example of how, again, I was able to take advantage of the ebbs and flows. But I'm also making clear that when we're getting to this last category, which we're at now, I understand going in just as easily as something great can happen, all of it can go to zero. So you have to factor that in when you're going in on the buying side. You need to factor in that I'm taking all the risk here. There's a much higher probability that I'm going to strike out than I'm going to hit a home run. So you need to understand that. And you need to allow yourself the ability where if you do hit a home run, if you did pull it off, then the win is as good as possible and it offsets a ton of strikeouts. You want that home run to have the biggest impact. You need to make sure that you got in low enough where if you did hit it, then we can all congratulate you because you did the best possible turnaround that you could have, and it offset a whole bunch of strikeouts all the way along the way. You want to give yourself that kind of room. So I'll use an example here about the player. And what I'm going to use for this example here is I'm going to go first. I want to share with you. Actually, no. I'm going to share with you the eBay auction first, and then I'll give you the backstory. I'll explain it a little bit better that way. Let's do that. I don't script these things, so I'm just making it up on the fly. You'll have to forgive me. Okay. So this is a 2018 unparalleled Sam Darnold. I guess we could call it kind of a rookie RPA. It's not really, but it's basically a rookie year card with a piece of jersey from a photo shoot or something. I forget what the exact was for this year, and sticker autograph. Nice card, fun card. Those unparalleled cards, I enjoyed them. I actually opened a couple of boxes of them back in 2018, and that's going to play into the story. So I bought this on eBay just the other day. So this past week here, and there's a good reason why I did that. I've actually been picking up over time a couple of different Sam Darnold cards. Sam Darnold over the last year or so, maybe even a little bit before that, has been pretty low. He's been about as low as you can be because he was playing for the Jets. And in addition to playing for the Jets, he was also not playing well for the Jets. So it's one of those situations where you have to ask yourself the question. And this is the question you have to ask yourself in this situation so is it because he's real bad? Is it because the Jets are real bad? Is it because of both? Is there the opportunity for redemption? And hard to say. That's why it's in the super high risk category. Anybody buying a card of Sam Darnold is saying to yourself, okay, I'm willing to take a stab at this. But if you're going to do that, you better not be paying top dollar. You better try to, like, if there's a best offer, you better be offering lower, whatever it is, because you know that there's a real possibility that maybe he sucks. Maybe he's just not any good. But I tend to think that there's a possibility that he could be a little bit better than that. And I have the luxury where in the methodology that I'm taking, I don't need him to be a great player. I don't need him to be an NFL MVP. I've got less lofty goals for him where I think he could still provide some value. But before I get to that, let me explain part of the reason that I bought that specific card. Because for me, it was a wonderful way of coming full circle. So let me actually show you a little clip here. This is from my YouTube channel. This is from back in 2018. So let me share this with you. And it'll help give a little bit of clarity on why I was interested in doing this. So let me quickly go over to the Chrome tab, and I'm going to open this up. Share audio as well. Let's tap. Okay, so this is a video from my channel. This is from September 11th, 2018. So this was actually the first sports card related video that I did coming back, because my channel goes back years. And I did a bunch of different things. I've done the channel history in the past. I'm not going to bore you with it again. But the long story short, this was when I decided after a couple of months to come back and use the YouTube channel again. And I thought, okay, let me do some sports card stuff, because I've been collecting, since 1991. So I've been at this a long time. So we're on, 1990 actually. So we're on 31 years. So I've been doing this for a while, but I hadn't done anything related to content on YouTube related to sports cards. So what I decided to do is at that time I was actually buying boxes of football, and I decided to take my hand at doing some box breaks. To be honest, I'm not very good at it. I can't feign a ton of enthusiasm. I find more enthusiasm in trolling different companies in the industry than I do opening boxes. Even if I pull something really cool, I enjoy it. I take it in stride, but I'm not gonna do cartwheels around the house. That's not my way. But in 2018, we had that rookie class. Lamar Jackson wasn't thought of as the guy. We were looking at Baker. We were looking at Sam Darnold. We were looking at a couple of other guys. And then we had two Joshes. Unfortunately, I pulled a lot of Josh Rosen and not enough Josh Allen. But anyway, that's not the point of this one. So I've already fast forwarded it to the exact spot. And when I show you the card, you'll see kind of how this came full circle here. So let me quickly do that for you.
So Kimoko Toure. All right. And we've got the autograph jersey of Sam Darnold.
So just let it zoom in so you can...
especially right now at this moment.
There you are. So I did turn on the audio, but I didn't put on my headphones, so I don't know if the audio came through for you. Regardless, the point is, as you can see, it is the exact same card I showed you a second ago. Not the identical copy, but the same basic card. White swatch, autograph, unparalleled, same card. So let me go back to it for 1 second, and then I'll finish my point here. So the thing is that I decided that I was going to pick this card up. I was looking for it. I started looking at a couple different Sam Darnold cards, and I have a variety of different ones. It's one of those things that as I get them, I'm going to put them away in a box, and because they're more of a lottery thing, I'm not going to think about them. But I tried to pick them up for a reasonable price, as relatively low as possible. So this specific example, since I want to use it, when I pulled it from that box in 2018, not long, that was around the time that they had that there was that Monday Night Football game where Sam Darnold actually played pretty well for a Monday Night Football game. It was on a big stage and everything. I actually put the card up on eBay not long after I recorded that video, and I was able to sell it. I don't remember the exact amount, so forgive me for that, but I know comfortably it was somewhere in the 150, 175 range. I know I put it close to $200, maybe best offer, something like that, but I ended up getting 150, 175 thereabouts. So the copy that I'm showing you here, I bought for less than $60. 3 years later, well, less than 3 years later, but I was able to buy it for a fraction of what I originally sold the copy for. 3 years, almost 3 years apart. So to me, it was kind of a coming full circle thing. So one of two things is going to happen with this. So this is where, like I said, you need to factor in the risk factor. He could go to Carolina. He could suck. He could lose his starting job to somebody, and it's basically Josh Rosen 2.0. You get another opportunity, but it just didn't work out. You get replaced by somebody else, they replace you, and then they move on without you. Or perhaps he figures out a way. The Carolina folks are able to work with him. He's able to recapture some of the potential that people saw in him when he was originally a high draft pick in the first round. And they look at the opportunity to, build off of it. If he never becomes a great quarterback, though, that isn't necessary for this to become a workable play. And the reason I say so, and I'm going to use an example of somebody else. I don't have any cards of him, but I want to use an example to why I don't need his ceiling to be like, I don't need him to be Patrick Mahomes. I don't need him to be Lamar Jackson. I don't need him to be Josh Allen. All I need him to be is a better version of what he was, because we've seen this already. And I want to use a real example here to kind of clarify my point, to finalize this last piece here. So hopefully, if you've been listening to me up until this point, you've been getting something out of this. So if you do, leave something in the comments and let me know if you have any thoughts on anything that I've said so far. I know there's a lot of stuff, but I want to make sure I explain myself well on this one, because there is a lot of thought that went into developing this concept that I've been using myself for quite some time. Okay, so I'm using Card Ladder as an example. I don't advertise their stuff. I've already explained this a million times, but I want to use this so that we have access to certain data in a chart. So this is what I need from this. So this is the 2012 Prism Ryan Tannehill base card, and this is the PSA 10. Now this chart that I'm showing you, I'm going to actually expand the chart for us in a second here. See if I can do it directly. Can I expand the chart? I think I probably can. So let me try to do it this way, because really I want to see the chart. That's fine. We'll just work with it. Okay, so a couple of things you need to know. This card has a population of 42, which is not very, not a lot. I'm sure if some more people sent in, it could probably raise it, but it hasn't been worth it up until this point. This all-time history shows that for a very long time, this card wasn't worth a lot. In fact, as of as late as July of 2018, only months before that video I shot of with the Sam Darnold pull from that Unparalleled box, you were able to buy that card. Somebody did for $3.15. A PSA 10 of Ryan Tannehill. Such was his stock at that time, coming off his time in Miami, that somebody was able to buy it for $3.15. I'm not sure that you couldn't have melted the plastic and gotten more than $3.15 out of it somehow. Maybe with recycling. I don't know. I'm sure there's a way. So imagine that. Well, if those of you who are familiar with football know, after he left Miami, disastrous as it was, the tenure in his career there, he went to Tennessee. And did he become an MVP? Nope. Did he become a potential all-time great in training? Nope. But did he become a good, solid quarterback that worked with the system they had to be able to do enough to help that team get to the playoffs and at least be respectable? Yes. Yes. He did his job, and he did a decent job. And just that was enough to propel this card within not that long. So here we are in 2020. All of a sudden, now you can get $79 for it. Whoa, from $3.15 to $79. Already, that's huge. Well, at its apex up here in August of 2020, less than 1 year ago, you could have sold this for $286. A card that you could have bought for $3.15 2 years before that. I don't need Sam Darnold to be Patrick Mahomes. I don't need Sam Darnold to be Lamar Jackson. I don't need him to do anything, really. If he sucks and goes to zero, it doesn't really matter because I didn't put a lot of money into it. But for this to be a successful play, I need him to be Ryan Tannehill. That seems a lot more reasonable goal, a lot more reasonable ceiling to try to attain. If he in Carolina is able to put together a respectable season, they're able to see potential in him, he's able to be the viable starter for some time over there in Carolina, that's good enough. If they're able to have any playoff aspirations, playoff success, heaven forbid, that's enough. That would immediately make that card worth more. It would be a decent play. And I have a few other Sam Darnold cards, some of which I spent probably less than $20 on, including some more limited versions of his rookie. I've got a couple. I've picked up some. I tried to keep the cost, like I said, to a minimum, because if worse comes to worse, I'm not out a lot. I basically bought a lottery ticket. I tried to keep the price on it as low as possible so that if I lose, I shrug my shoulders. I enjoy the card. I came full circle on it. I got back my old card that I pulled in the first place. That'd be all right. I don't mind. Then it can go in the PC. Worth something, worth nothing, go in the PC. If it turns out he plays a little bit better in Carolina, his value goes up, well, that's a win. Because then any proceeds I'm able to get from those cards can then go for my aspirations. I can find a cool Juan Soto. I can find a Albert Pujols. I can find a cool Medano card. I can get a nice vintage card. Maybe go get myself a Mantle. There's so many possibilities. And that's the point of this entire thing. All those moves, all those cards that I showed you, and the cards that I'm using as different examples. And I even forgot one that I was going to use. And I'll include it here at the end. What the heck, since I've got the tab open. And I'll use this as an example of one where it's PC card, but it's a PC card that has some potential to do something else as well. So this right here is from my Instagram. And this is a 2020 Panini Prism Fireworks insert, gold version of Juan Soto, a gold prism. These are numbered to 10. But here's the thing. I've got a collection of different inserts that are all the gold prisms numbered to 10. I've got 5 of them. 5 different types, 5 different inserts. I love them all. These are all in the PC. However, if the circumstances are right, if down the road Juan Soto continues to play well, if he eventually becomes a blue chip caliber player, we already know that blue chip caliber guys in Prism, in basketball and in football, they've appreciated quite a bit. Baseball is last on this bandwagon. If baseball eventually becomes, so we start to respect the gold prism in baseball, the same way that we respect it in some of those other sports, even to a fraction of that, these all become worth a lot more. Most of these I got for less than $100. This sudden impact, I got for $30 inside of a lot with a bunch of other cards, including other Juan Sotos. I got most of these super cheap. Even the graded one didn't cost me that much because I had some PayPal credit at the time. I was maybe $20 out of pocket on it. I did not invest a lot of money into this. These are all PC pieces. I'm happy to have them. I love them. But if down the road the values ascend on a bunch of these, I would probably pick a couple that are my favorites. They would stay in the PC exactly where they are. The other ones would move on. And then I'd look for some opportunities to find some other cards that would be awesome to add into that PC as well. Some grails, some other possibilities. I'm flexible. I'm willing to adjust and adapt to whatever's going on to allow me the opportunity to build the exact collection that I want to build. And that flexibility is what a model like that lets you do. It allows you to figure out what you really want. It also allows you to put everything in a category in its place where you understand it. And remembering where it falls in that grouping then also helps you in deciding, wait a minute, how much should I actually pay for this? Wait, that's a high risk one? I'm going to have to keep that price real low. I'm going to have to bargain hunt. I can't be paying top of market for this, because if it doesn't work out, I just wasted money. On a blue chip, I'm willing to be a lot more aggressive. On a mid one, I'm willing to be a little bit aggressive. On a lottery ticket, do not spend your paycheck on a lottery ticket. That's where those differences lie. And on a PC card, do what makes you happy. That's why each of those categories serve a purpose. And every single time I go out to buy it, even if I'm not sitting there staring at the picture, I made the picture for you guys. Even if I'm not doing that, I still have it in the back of my mind. Where does this fall into what I'm trying to do? Am I just buying this because it's shiny and it's directly in front of my face and now I'm going to buy it and then afterwards I'm like, oh shoot, what am I going to do with this? I try not to do that. I'm trying to make sure that every one of my purchases, whether it's for the PC or whether it's for one of the other categories here, all of them are deliberate, all of them have a purpose, all of them get me closer to my goals, whatever those goals happen to be. And that's the takeaway I hope you get from this. Don't copy my model. If it works for you, great, take it with you. If you want to make it more complicated, do that. If you want to make it simpler, do that. If you want to completely reevaluate and come up with a new metaphor for yourself, do that. But the only thing I would say take away from this is that there should be some thought into it. You should have your own version of whatever that is and decide for yourself how you want to do this thing. Even if you're a pure collector, you should still understand why you're trying to do it, how you're going to do it. And every time you should have some kind of at least strategy in mind so that you can say to yourself, how can I get the most out of my hobby dollar to get as much as I can to build the collection that I want to build, to curate the collection that I want to end up with, the collection that I'll be proud of, the collection that I can enjoy, and a collection that doesn't make me anxious with the movements of the market. And that's the ultimate thing. If you can have a collection where the market can go up or the market can go down and you're not losing any sleep at night and you're not sweating, you probably did it all right. However you got there. So that'll be the last piece I leave you on. Already a long enough video, so hopefully you got something out of it. Let me know if you made it to the end of the video. Thank you for listening. We do more little kind of deep dives and sometimes talking head videos on this channel. We do that if you haven't seen it before. If you haven't already liked the video, could you do that? That'd be great. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, could you do that? And on Fridays, I do live streams where we talk about different hobby topics. It's kind of an open question and answer thing, and it can be whatever it's going to be. We usually hang out and have some fun. Anyway, that's it for me this time around. Thank you for listening, and catch you in the next one.